Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're trying to picture, the very last days of the dinosaurs in Europe. What was actually walking around right before that massive asteroid hit?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. And we're going back about 66 million years to look at one specific example, Arenysaurus.
Right, and what it might tell us about that really critical moment in history.
Exactly. But we've got a scientific paper here describing the discovery and how it fits in, plus a news piece with an expert talking about these last dinosaurs.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is what exactly?
Well, we want to get beyond just the basics of Arenysaurus. We need to understand why it's significant, being one of the very last non-bird dinosaurs, right on the edge of extinction.
What can this specific dinosaur, found over in Spain, tell us about life right at the end of the Cretaceous?
That's the goal.
All right, let's start with the discovery itself. Where did these bones actually surface?
They were found in the Tremp Formation, that's in the Pyrenees Mountains in Spain. Specifically, it was near a village called Aren, or Areny, I think, in Catalan.
Ah, Arenysaurus. Makes sense.
It's a direct link. The genus name comes right from the village name.
That's neat. And when did this all happen? When was it formally described?
That was back in 2009. A team of Spanish researchers, led by Pereda Suberbiola, published the description. They named it Arenysaurus ardevoli.
Ardevoli. What's the story behind that part? Does it mean something specific?
It does, yeah. It's actually a tribute.
Oh, wow.
It honors a geologist, Luis Ardevol. It's a nice way to recognize the broader scientific effort, the geology that underpins these paleontology finds.
That is a nice touch. Now, something that really jumped out from the sources was the community involvement.
Oh, yeah.
They mentioned the local people in Aren actually helped the paleontologists. That sounds pretty unusual.
It really does. Apparently, the townspeople were incredibly supportive, actually, like working alongside the scientists during the dig. And it seems their contribution was so valued that the dig site itself was formally dedicated to the town.
That's fantastic. It really shows how local enthusiasm can make a real difference in science. So you wanted to see these bones today. They're not locked away in some huge national museum somewhere else.
No, actually. They built a museum right there in Aren, specifically for Arenysaurus.
Really? In the village?
Yeah. It holds the original fossils, and they've got reconstructions, videos from the dig, the whole experience.
That's great.
And what's really cool, I think, is they have an exact replica of the dig site. So you can see the bones laid out just as they were found.
Like stepping back into the excavation, that must be amazing for visitors.
Definitely brings it to life.
Okay, so we've established it's from Spain, around 66 million years ago. That puts it squarely in the Late Cretaceous, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Right at the end, in fact.
It's about
the Maastrichtian epoch.
the Maastricht.
Yeah.
That's the final stage before the big one.
Precisely. The very last slice of the Cretaceous period. Which is why Arenysaurus is so important. It's one of the last non-avian dinosaurs we know of before the extinction event.
And where does it fit in the grand dinosaur family tree? What kind of dinosaur are we talking about?
It's a hadrosaurid, the duck-billed dinosaurs.
Ah, right. The duck-billed.
And within that family, it's part of the Lambeosaurini subfamily.
Lambeosaurines. Okay, refresh my memory. Those are the ones with the headgear, right? The crests.
That's them. They're known for having these often elaborate, hollow crests on their skulls.
And what were those for? Display? Making noise?
Probably a bit of everything. Amplifying sounds for communication, maybe species recognition, visual displays, that kind of thing.
So Arenysaurus likely had one of these crests. Did they find enough of the skull to know what it looked like?
Well, the paper mentions a partial skull and skeleton were found, so the exact shape is maybe inferred a bit from its relatives. But what's really interesting, classification-wise, is that Arenysaurus seems to be unique enough to get its own tribe within the Lambeosaurines.
Its own tribe.
Yeah, a group called Arenysaurini. Arenysaurus is the only member found so far.
So even within the Lambeosaurines, it's kind of its own distinct branch.
Exactly. It suggests it was on a unique evolutionary path there in Europe, right at the end. Maybe adapted to something specific in that environment.
Fascinating. Even at the very end, there was this distinct evolution happening. Okay, what about size? Was it a giant?
Not really, no. The sources describe it as medium-sized for a hadrosaur.
Okay.
Around 5 to 6 meters long. That's maybe 16 to 20 feet.
And weight?
Estimated at about 1 metric ton. So, a decent size, but not like the colossal sauropods or anything.
Right. And a key point seems to be how complete the fossil is. That's pretty significant, isn't it?
Hugely significant. The paper really highlights this. It's described as one of the most complete and crucially, best dated Lambeosaurine fossils from this period in Europe.
Why is that completeness so valuable?
Well, it just gives us so much more information. We can understand its anatomy in much finer detail, and that helps us understand not just Arenysaurus, but the whole picture of European dinosaurs at that critical time. Maybe we can see adaptations in its bones compared to earlier hadrosaurs, perhaps related to diet or how it moved as the environment was changing leading up to the impact.
So putting it all together,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway? Why is Arenysaurus such an important piece of the puzzle?
I think it gives us a vital window into those last hadrosaur populations in Europe. Studying it helps us understand dinosaur diversity and where they were living right before everything changed.
Right before the lights went out, basically.
Pretty much. And because the fossils are so well preserved, it allows for really detailed study, maybe even looking for microscopic details about its biology or the environment it lived in.
It's like getting a snapshot from Europe moments before the KPG event.
Exactly. It helps answer questions like, which dinosaurs were actually thriving or at least hanging on in this part of the world? Were things similar everywhere, or were there big regional differences in how dinosaurs were doing right at the end?
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive on Arenysaurus, we've got its discovery in Spain, a real partnership between science and the local community. It's positioned as one of Europe's last Lambeosaurines with its own unique evolutionary spot.
Right, the Arenysaurine tribe.
It's sort of medium-sized, and the fact that we have such complete remains to study, it really gives us a clearer picture of that specific time and place.
Yeah, it's a really significant find for understanding the final chapter of the dinosaurs in Europe. It adds a lot to that story.
Definitely. Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener. If Arenysaurus was living right up until the extinction event, what could its existence, and maybe future finds like it, tell us about the environmental conditions right at the very end?
Yeah, could its remains hold clues about how sudden the impact felt or why some dinosaurs were hit harder than others?
And what other secrets about this massive turning point in Earth's history might still be buried in those late Cretaceous rocks, just waiting for us to find them?